Oh my god, did you guys see IGN's top 20 horror game list? It was like, well, I'm not even gonna just say it was like, I'm just gonna pull it up. There are people that are livid about this list. So Stay Out of the House? Dude, hell yeah. I'm so glad that got on the list because this game is insanely good. It deserves a spot in the top 25. It would be in my top 25 as well. Slender, The 8 Pages. Okay, so we played this a couple weeks ago. And, you know, did it do its rounds on YouTube? For sure. A great YouTube game. It's iconic, you know? But, so, am I supposed to think that iconic things are going to make this list, even though they're bad? This is a horrible game. This game is horrible. Now, I know some of you might remember it being really entertaining and fun, but did any of you guys make it to the stream where I beat this game? It was just a few weeks ago. It is so bad. It's so bad. Oh my god. It's so RNG and like, it's just brutal. It's brutal, dude. But you know what? It's iconic. I think it deserves to be there. Evil Within, top 25. I think Evil Within being 23, that's not crazy. You know, it's a good game. It's one of the better games, I think. But I don't know if it would make my top 25. Evil Within, not too crazy for top 25, right? Condemned Criminal Origins. Again, I don't think this is too crazy. I think Condemned is a good pick for top 25. Like, it's a classic. If you guys have never played Condemned, when it first came out, it was known for its like melee combat. Like, it was super scary and the melee combat was really good. And it was rare to see like a horror game with first-person melee combat. And on top of that, the investigation aspects of this game are really cool. It was something that was unique back in the day, and I'd still say it's quite unique in a horror game for sure. Manhunt, this is where I draw the line. Manhunt's a classic, I'd say, but I don't know. I haven't played this in a long time. But top 25 horror games ever made? Manhunt? I think that's stretching a horror game a little bit. Inside, I really like Inside, but I don't know, it wouldn't make my top 25. It's a great game though. It's very good. But I don't fully disagree. The only one so far that I think is a little silly is Manhunt. All right, let's continue. Visage, great horror game. You know, if PT actually got finished, it would have been Visage, or Visage would have been the closest thing. When Konami canceled Silent Hills, yeah. So they know. Visage is like PT if it got finished, you know, basically. But the devs, Kojima and Del Toro, I don't know which one of them said this, but PT wasn't actually supposed to be what the gameplay was going to be like for the game. It was just a trailer to hype up the game. I digress. Phasmophobia. Well, this is truly where the list gets controversial. But doing like this broad of a list, I think is the major problem of why people complained about it so much online and why people were just laughing at it, because like Phasmo and Dead by Daylight in a top 25 horror games, I get it. Phasmo is like humongous. It's an amazing game. It's one of those revolutionary titles where people try and copy it every month. Like every month there's a new Phasmo-like game, but nothing ever replaces Phasmo. Just like every month, or not every month, but every year there's multiple Dead by Daylight games. Project Resistance is one of them, that try and do it like Dead by Daylight, but they just can't. But in the terms of Dead by Daylight, it's only as popular as it is because of all the licensing they have, like Alien and Chucky, and you know, that's the only reason it's still popular. And I know this because it's my most played game on Steam, and I only play it when there's new DLC, like most people, unless you're insane. Phasmo, great game. I think it might make my top 25 too. Dead by Daylight, I also, if I did this broad of a list, I think it would be on mine. But I don't know, man. You'd have to really think about top 25, but sure. Number 17 and number 18 for these games is not too crazy, you know. I need to see the top 10. I forget what's up there. Until Dawn, remastered. Okay, this is funny that they put the remastered version up because apparently the remastered version is not that great. right? I haven't played it yet. I want to play it this month, but I don't know. I'm hearing bad things, guys. Anyway, Alan Wake 2, I think that's a good pick. People consider Alan Wake 2 for the top horror games ever made. But the thing about Alan Wake 2 and why it might be controversial for some people, this is not made for everyone. Like I said when I was playing the DLC, if you don't have an extremely good grasp on the English language, like you like 5-syllable words, if you don't memorize all of them, you know, if you don't know the definition to humongous words, and if you're not like an English major, this game's whoosh, you're gonna play it and you're not gonna know what's going on. Like, you will not understand a damn thing. And for those people, like, if you play this with and I don't mean this as a attack on anyone or a negative thing, because my vocabulary is also pretty shit too, obviously. It doesn't take long to watch and realize that. But if you play it with a low vocabulary, you're not gonna like it. You're straight up not gonna like it. You won't understand anything. Like, the writing is very complex in this, and it talks about a lot of meta topics, and there's a lot of metaphors in the game attached to like real life situations and stuff. It's something that requires a lot of thinking, and for horror, I think a lot of people don't like doing a lot of thinking, so it's a lot of yapping. Yeah, there's a lot of yapping, but I liked Alan Wake 2. I thought it was great. It's not one of my favorites. Soma, I disagree. I don't like Soma. I would not even put this in my top 25. I'm not a Soma enjoyer. I think it's okay. I know a lot of people love Soma, but it's not for me. I played it and I just didn't even like it very much. Exactly, Rakir. Alan Wake 2 is about the story, and like a lot of people that play it, I've watched streamers play it. There's so many people that just don't even know what's going on. Even at the end, beginning, middle, and end, they're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. I have no clue what just happened. And then the game's over, and for those people, they just played a game with mediocre combat and nothing else. You know what I mean? Because like they didn't know anything about the story, so what else is it? It's a game with good visuals and mediocre combat. But then if for people that understood the story, you know, changes their lives, let's say. But yeah, Soma. Clock Tower, now this is an interesting choice. For me, I would put Clock Tower 3. I do like Clock Tower 1. But I think for me personally, it is a little boring. But one thing I do love about this is this game is super inspired by Dario Argento. So like Suspiria. And there's another movie, if you guys haven't seen it, it's called Phenomena. Or it's called Creepers in other countries. But it's starring Jennifer Connelly. Looks exactly like her in the movie. She's wearing the exact same outfit. And it's like, that it was where they got the idea, or vice versa. I don't know which one it was, but yeah, Scissorman's really cool. I love Clock Tower as a franchise. I think it's deserving. Like, Clock Tower is one of the, I think Fatal Frame, Clock Tower. Oh no, what is that I see below Clock Tower? Fatal Frame, Clock Tower, Silent Hill, and Resident Evil are like the GOATs. But for Clock Tower, there's only like 1 or 2 good games. Forbidden Siren 2. I tried this game. I tried all the Siren games, and this would not even make my top 100. But, you know, I do realize that people love this franchise and this game. Equally scary classic that's less well known is Forbidden Siren 2. The story follows a group of stranded survivors on a remote Japanese island exploiting the best J-horror tropes. This episodic style mystery has a steep learning curve. Emphasis right here, guys. You guys know me, I play a lot of hard games. Okay? Siren, bruh. Siren's too hard. And by too hard, I don't mean like, oh man, this boss took me 50 tries. I mean, man, I've pressed every single pixel on this level 10 times over and I'm still not progressing through the level. What am I doing wrong? It's that kind of hard. Now this one's a little more forgiving than the Siren 1, but yeah, I don't know. For me, Siren 2 is a stinker. Being in the top 15 is nuts to me. Like, if this is in the top 15, there better be a Fatal Frame, because Fatal Frame, in my opinion, is far better than Forbidden Siren. Resident Evil 1. So if Resident Evil 1 is here, Resident Evil 2 and 3 are just as good or better. This one's more of an influential, like, iconic game, but Resident Evil 2 and 3 are the better games in my opinion. You know, and remake is the definition of survival horror. So Resident Evil being here is making me think there's only one game per franchise, because Resident Evil and Silent Hill would make up a large portion of the top 10, if not all the games. I digress. It's hard to imagine what a horror in video games would look like without the arrival of Resident Evil, the first in a long-running, extremely successful series. Letting players explore the zombie-infested, puzzle-ridden Spencer Mansion, it's fair to say the survival horror genre hasn't looked back since. Primitive by today's standards, Resident Evil set the mold for everything that followed: the isolation, limited resources, relentless sense of dread, and jump scares. These are all things Resident Evil pioneered in video games. Without its survival horror genre simply wouldn't exist. That's not true, but hey, being a writer, am I right? Yes, Clock Tower outlined the blueprint, but Resident Evil masterfully executed the ideas, propelled the survival horror to the masses. Of course, the formula has since been regularly improved upon. The original is arguably weaker than most of its sequels. That's true, but none of it would have been possible without the progenitor. Nice. Okay, that's fair. That's fair to say. I think that's good. I think what they said about it's decent, and where it's placed is also decent. Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay, hot take. I agree. I think Five Nights at Freddy's, you know, okay, this list is about being iconic. Five Nights at Freddy's, come on. It's icon. Come on. It's iconic. But people hate this franchise, so. Bias, bias. If you're giving your opinion, there's no bias. Like, I'm not biased. I play this game like once a fucking like century, dude. I've streamed Five Nights at Freddy's twice ever, on release day and then like last year. Okay, there was always something inherently creepy about being in a Chuck E. Cheese restaurant. Okay, you'll flip through the security cameras of the devices. Five Nights at Freddy's. They should have called this like the most iconic horror games ever, because Five Nights at Freddy's, like, what did they call this? Maybe they did. Top 25 best horror games ever made. We rank the top 25 scariest spookies of all time. Okay, well, immediately we can't take this list too serious. The 25 scariest spookies. No matter what, by the way, I'm gonna defend IGN. I'll give you time to cringe. 1 sec. Did you get it out? All right. I'm going to defend IGN for a sec. I just put up a Silent Hill tier list on YouTube, and the amount of people arguing where, like, Silent Hill Origins, mid-game, Silent Hill Downpour, mid-game, Silent Hill Shattered Memories, mid-game, Silent Hill Homecoming, mid-game. The amount of people talking about the wrong placement of those games as if they're like the holy grail of horror is nuts. So to do a 25 best horror games of all time, no one's ever going to agree with the list for the most part. So I do get it on that front. I digress. Let's continue. Uh-oh, speaking of controversial. Okay, so if Resident Evil 1 is on here and Resident Evil 4 is on here, then Resident Evil 2, Fatal Frame 2, Resident Evil 2 at least, if not 2 remake as well, should be on. So Resident Evil 4 survival horror, I think it's not survival horror. I think it's action horror. So it's still in the horror genre, but it's like an action horror game. So the scariest spookies of all time, RE4, I don't know. Well, let's see what it says. By the time Resident Evil 4 rolled around, played out formula of the series, we needed reinvention. Although its scares are a touch lighter compared to its predecessors, Resident Evil 4 still packed a punch thanks to its lightning fast zombies called Ganados and chainsaw wielding maniacs who were never too far behind. On any best of list, Resident Evil 4 would likely fare higher, but judged purely as a horror game, it takes a slight step backwards compared to the previous 3 games, opting for a... It takes a slight step backwards compared to the previous 3 games. Is that foreshadowing to the next 3 games being on here? Opting for a more gung-ho action approach, it's nevertheless still a fantastic horror game. Yeah, if you're gonna put RE4 on a horror list, like you either put it on there and put it really high or don't put it on there at all. But yeah, Resident Evil 4. Yeah, dude, Resident Evil 7 is legitimately like, if you play Resident Evil 7, no spoilers, VR headset on, darkness in your room, and I'm talking no spoilers. You don't know Jack exists. You don't know Marguerite. You have no clue about Evelyn. You don't even know who Ethan is. If you play it like that, VR headset as intended, midnight, no one's home in your house, lights off, scariest game ever made. Easily one of the scariest games ever made. No questions asked. But see, a lot of people played RE7 like listening to the new Snoop Dogg album, blasting on their speakers, eating pizza, spilling their fucking drink in their keyboard, their roommates having a party, they don't even have their headset on, and then they're judging it based on how scary it is. Well, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm gonna comment on a 3 Michelin star restaurant's food, and I'm just gonna smell it. Yeah, okay. Left 4 Dead 2. Left 4 Dead 2, like on a horror list, is, I think this is the weirdest one so far. Like Left 4 Dead 2, I think we could all agree is a god tier game. I played the hell out of this on Xbox, surprisingly. And then I bought it again on PC and got all the achievements. Well, I got all the achievements on Xbox. I didn't get them all again on. I digress. God tier game, but on a top 25 horror games list in general, but also making the top 10. And then, but the funny thing is they say, oh, you know, we can't put RE4 any higher because it can't be judged purely as a horror game. But then right after that is Left 4 Dead 2. It's like, well, what, oh, we can't put it too higher because the top 10, you know, we gotta be 9. Next game, another if you think Resident Evil 4 is an action game, then this is like a turbo action game. Resident Evil 4 has some scary moments. Regenerators, when you first start the game and you meet the like you're introduced to the bad guys, it is pretty scary, but you can get used to Ganados quickly. Left 4 Dead is never scary. Like maybe when the witch shows up, but you're with 3 of your friends just fucking blasted infinite ammo shotguns, basically infinite ammo shotguns, unless you're playing on the hardest difficulty. You know, Left 4 Dead on a horror list, I don't know, man. And they and the headline, like the slogan of the freaking thing, 25 scariest spookies of all time. Okay. Outlast. Okay, so now where I said Soma and Outlast can be compared pretty well, where I said Soma was garbage, I went back and played Outlast like last year or the year before. I didn't like Outlast for the longest time, but I did like it the last time I played. Regardless of that, Outlast in the top 10. Like, it's iconic. Outlast, Amnesia, Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, these are iconic horror games that molded the past, like, 10 years of the horror genre. So, as someone that grew up with, like, Resident Evil and Silent Hill and Fatal Frame and, like, Clock Tower, you know, this was not my cup of tea when I first played it because I'm so used to the classics. But, you know, to a lot of people in the previous generation to mine, this is their Resident Evil. This is their Silent Hill. Like, when they grow up and they see a list like this, like 10 years from now, and Outlast isn't on there, they'll be like, what the hell, dude, Outlast? That's like for me, not including Resident Evil. So I get Outlast being in the top 10. But for me, I wouldn't put it there. It's a great game though. And it was really scary when it came out, but yeah, I wouldn't. This is the best inclusion of the list. Alien Isolation. You want to know why this is the best inclusion on the list? Let me change the scene really quick. So IGN put Alien Isolation as 6. IGN Alien Isolation review. This is rich, dude. So one of my least favorite reviews of all time, and a game and something that made me stop paying any attention to critics. I'll show you right now. All right, so Alien Isolation, the top 6 best horror games of all time, says IGN. I'll give you the low intelligence take, or not low intelligence. I'll give you like the normie take, which I think is valid. Okay, it's really hard for me to tackle this. Because yes, they gave it a 5.9 mediocre, which is like they should be ashamed of themselves. And you should read the actual review. I did. This guy picked hard mode. Okay, I'm not going to drag this guy through the mud, but he picked hard mode and then complained it was too hard. That was like the main thing of the review. Also, this same guy tweeted out just a couple weeks ago when Alien Isolation got a they said they're making Alien Isolation 2. He doubled down in his review. He quote tweeted it and he was like, "Oh, it's so funny to this day looking back at people angry at my review. I would do it again." Or I forget the exact wording. Maybe someone has a link to it. I'll pull it up. But he doubled down and all the comments were they were pissed, as they should be, because you should never, if you're a professional in this field, you have to treat it as a professional career. You can't just treat it as a joke where you're like taking one of the most iconic horror games, says them, top 10, says them, and you treat your horrible review of it as a joke. Like, oh yeah, I would do it again. Like, bruh, have some professionalism. Like, be like, oh man, if I could go back, I would change my review. I feel really stupid about that. Don't say anything. But doubling down on one of the most hated reviews of all time just says so much about your character. Like, you're just such an ignorant, like, you do not give a shit. Like, you're so far, your head is so far up your own ass, it's insane. You know what I mean? I digress. The only reason I'm so hard on this is because of this. So that's like the normie take, like I said. But in reality, this article, I don't know who it was written by, but we're going to find out when we scroll to the bottom. I don't think it's this guy. So it's like two separate people. So when you see like IGN gave this number, the general internet is like, oh, who trusts IGN? IGN sucks dick. But it's some human that just works at IGN. It's like one of the 50 humans that is chosen to review that particular game. It's not just IGN. Like, IGN's not this entity, It's some human being behind the number. Like, I could rate Resident Evil, I could work for IGN, rate Resident Evil 9, and let's say I give it a 9 and a 9, and then there's comments like, yeah, fuck you, IGN, you're so stupid. I love Bawkbasoup. Like, you don't know. No one ever clicks in to figure out who wrote it. I digress though. The irony, it's fucking hilarious that Alien Isolation is in the top 10 on their best horror games of all time, when this is in the, if there was a top 10 bad IGN reviews of all time, this would be in the top 3. There's no question. Like, if you guys don't know, this is an infamous review. Like, this tarnished their reputation forever. You see it to this day. If you're on Twitter and you check, let's say you check IGN every day, and sometimes I do because I just live on social media. I'm clinically online, so I know these things, unfortunately. But when you click into like IGN reviews, people will always mention the Alien Isolation review. Like, oh, they gave my favorite game a 7 out of 10. Remember that time they rated Alien Isolation badly? It's just iconic. Anyway, I digress. Alien Isolation, top 10. Who would have thought? All right. Did they? Oh, I thought they included the review. I was going to say, Jesus Christ. All right. So, Alien's a masterclass in fear, building uneasy tension and suspense via the threat of its single deadly extraterrestrial. On paper, it's a concept not easily translated to a video game form, but Creative Assembly absolutely nailed it with Alien Isolation. First class licensed game thanks to unrivaled attention to detail. Yep. The alien is crazy. I can't wait for the second game, by the way. It's a masterclass. Yeah, now it's a masterclass, says IGN. It's a masterclass of horror. But I agree. I think if on any top 25 horror games of all time list, I think Alien Isolation definitely deserves to be there. It would be in my top 25 somewhere. I don't know if it'd be in the top 10. But I do think it's worthy of being up this high. Dead Space. This better be the remake. So unlike RE4, I think Dead Space is a horror game. I thought Dead Space was scary as hell when I played it the first time. And Dead Space Remake, in my opinion, is like a 10 out of 10 game. I absolutely love Dead Space Remake, and why I love it and why I think it deserves to be this high, if not higher, and it's in my top 5 too, by the way, is because It is a very scary game that is, every time an enemy shows up, it is intense and it is exhilarating and it is scary because they are so fast and you have to react with your weapons. And the weapons are incredible in Dead Space. Every weapon is really well balanced. Like if you like the flamethrower the most, use it because it's insanely good. If you like the line cutter, use it because it's insanely good. All the weapons are really good, so you could use whatever you like the most. And if you don't like the weapons, you could use the telekinesis, which is also insanely good. And even though all the weapons are good and the telekinesis is good, it doesn't mean it's an easy game. There are some hard parts in this game. And if you're not having trouble with the enemies, the environmental, like, traversing the environment might be the hardest thing in your playthrough. I love Dead Space. I think it's like the definition of a fun action horror game. But more, unlike RE4, I think with Dead Space, it's a horror action game. And with RE4, I think it's an action horror game. You know what I mean? Because Dead Space is actually scary and it tries to be scary. The atmosphere is incredible. All the sound design is incredible. And it keeps you on edge for the most part. But I think... top 25 horror games of all time. Games. This is a demo. I don't know how I feel about this one, man. I hate that PT is iconic. It is. And I had it on my tier list for Silent Hill, and people were also mad at me in the comments, but if people listen to what I said about PT, I don't like when it's on lists like this. I don't think it should be talked about in this manner. Like, iconic pieces of horror, yeah, PT is definitely up there. Like, it's iconic, but I love how Daryl Dixon in the background here. Let's see what it says. PT may have not had a full release and it's no longer available to download, so we debated whether it should be on the list. Well, that's good they debated it. The playable teaser hints today PT is one of the scariest games ever made. That's true, and such deserves recognition. Sure. The result of a cross-industry once at a console generation collaboration between acclaimed creators Hideo Kojima and Del Toro was revealed. Gamescom. PT would go on to become an obsession for players across the internet, Twitter, Reddit, Twitch, and YouTube. Neo, GAF, whatever the hell that is, and other forums all attempted to piece together exactly how to reach its true ending. Then there was the game itself, which was terrifying. The reveal was fascinating. PT was set in a single, beautifully rendered, looping hallway. Turning a corner remained as scary the first time as it was on the 15th. The subtle changes to the environment on each loop preyed on the player's expectations of familiarity and added disturbing life to a seemingly restricted play area. Yeah, like, I agree with everything said here. Obviously, I think most people do. But it's just so funny to me, like, top 5 horror games of all time, a demo in the top 5. I think this is the kind of game that on these lists, there should be like honorable mentions at the end, and you throw something like PT in there, you know what I mean? But this isn't my list, so I would, if I were to put PT on a list, it would be an honorable mention. Because, like, you know what I mean? Amnesia in the top 3. Okay, so Amnesia, another iconic one. Like I mentioned before with Outlast and Five Nights at Freddy's, it's like that YouTuber, like the other generation grew up, and myself as well. Like, I'm sort of in that generation too, honestly. But Amnesia, I do not think, like, in my opinion, you guys can raise your pitchforks if you want. I'm trying not to look at chat too much to influence my opinion. But man, I think Amnesia is, for one, I didn't like it when it came out. And the only reason it was as popular as it was, in my opinion, is because of how loudly all the YouTubers screamed when they seen the fucking first enemy. And on top of that, I don't even think it was that scary. It's just the fact that, like, PewDiePie and Markiplier and whoever else, they play the game and they scream super loud at everything, and then every other YouTuber's like, wait, if I do that, I could get millions of views. So they just boot it up, they start screaming their heads off, and now all of a sudden it's the scariest game ever made, when it's not even in like the top 10 scariest games ever made. It's not even close. Like, when the first enemy shows up, sure, that's a scary moment. It's really well placed. Like, the first enemy is so well placed. I like, it's perfect. You just open this random door and there he is. Terrifying. But everything after that first, like, build up, sure, maybe that puzzle in the water where you're jumping on the boxes and the water splashing up, Sure, that's pretty scary too, but everything else in the game is just like not great in my opinion. I don't think, like Amnesia being in the top 25, sure. Top 3, like better than Dead Space remake, above RE4 is on the list, so above RE4, above Alien Isolation, even Outlast, man. I don't know. I'm not a huge Amnesia enjoyer. Okay, this is deserving. Resident Evil 2 remake. So we're this high up. There's only one game left, and it's definitely Silent Hill 2. We're this high up. So Resident Evil 2 remake. Like, I see what they're going for with this list, but it's just so weird. Like, okay, since Resident Evil 1 is on there, they can't do 2, they can't do 3, they can't do Code Veronica, they can't do 0, and they can't do remake. They have to do one that feels like a different game, so they put RE4 on there. Okay? And I get it. And then since RE4 and RE1 are on there, well, they can't do, like, they can't do other ones, so they got to pick a new genre as well. RE2. RE7, this is where I'm going with this. RE7 not making the top 25, and I don't even like RE7 that much. Like, I did an RE tier list. It's not even in the top 10 for me. I don't think, maybe it's like 9 or 8, but it's the top horror games, like scariest spooks of all time, and RE7's not there. That's insane. No Fatal Frame game being there. That's insane. Like, these two things are nuts to me. Like, no RE7. Like, Outlast and Amnesia, I get they're iconic, but RE7 was also pretty iconic. RE7 low-key kind of sucks though. If that is your defense of RE7 not being here, Amnesia low-key sucks. PT low-key sucks. Alien Isolation, Outlast low-key sucks. Let's see what else. Five Nights at Freddy's low-key sucks. Siren high-key fucking blows dick. Clock Tower low-key sucks. Soma low-key sucks. You know what I mean? So like, sure, if that is what you want to say, it low-key sucks. Most of the games of this fucking list low-key suck. Manhunt low-key sucks, you know? Like, okay, sure, that low-key sucks, then take off half the list. If that's the defense. Well, I don't think RE2 remake low-key sucks. I think that as a remake, like Missing the Beast scenarios, that's a flop, but the game is incredible other than that. Like, yeah, there's no beast scenarios. Well, there is, but they didn't live up to the hype, and that sucks. But like, does the game low-key suck? No. The game is fucking incredible. Now, I'm wondering what Silent Hill they picked for the 2. I guess 2 remake. So let's see what they have to say about say about Resident Evil 2. There are many contenders for best entry in the Resident Evil series, but our vote, empathetically, goes to the 2019 remake of Resident Evil 2, which happens to be the spookiest in a long line of quality RE spookies. Who wrote this? Okay, what the hell, dude? It happens to be the spookiest in a long line of RE spookies? No, it's not. I think most people would agree that it's RE7, and RE7's not even on this list. You know what I mean? RE2 is not scary at all. I think RE2 deserves a place in the top 25 horror games ever. I think top 5 is you know, great. But like with lines like this and like the headline of the article being about like spookies, you know, keyword. No, RE7 is criminal. And by the way, I know after the fact, oh, why are you so caught up on RE7? I'm not even an RE7 enjoyer, really. And but I know, like, you know, masterclass when I see it. And the first half of RE7, you know, people consider it some of the scariest shit ever. If PT's on here, dude, then RE7 should be. But that's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. And I'm a low-key RE7 hater, man. I hate on the second half of that game every chance I get. If I see someone in chat mention like a shitty part of a game, I'll instantly be like, well, it ain't no RE7 boat, you know? So you're getting... I'm not even a fanboy, and I will sit here and say this list sucks because no RE7. We're not... This list sucks because no RE7. There's many things I think that are a little questionable about this list. But no, RE7 is definitely a high offender of a top 25 horror game list. Manhunt is scarier. Manhunt is better and scarier than RE7. Yeah, okay. Manhunt. Let me tell you, I bet you most people that actually are like people see Manhunt, they're like, fuck yeah, I love that as a kid. All they can remember is walking up to like innocent people and like strangling with a bag and making them suffocate, like just the brutality of the game. But you ask them like any story beats or literally anything else about the game besides the brutality, and they can't even say a goddamn syllable about it. So like Manhunt, you know, goddamn, dude. No Cry of Fear. There's a lot of games that are missing for this, I think, like scariest games. Cry of Fear on a scariest games? Yes, Cry of Fear definitely deserves to be scary. You know the irony of discussing this list? I could make my own top 25 and get just as much hate. or like just as much or more hate as this list. But yeah, like Cry of Fear I would definitely have on mine. Cry of Fear is terrifying, dude. Subnautica should be on here. Subnautica is very scary. Scariest games. Scariest games list would be fun. Do it? Yeah, maybe I will do a scariest games list, but man, I just ranted about most of these games already. Anyway, RE2 being in the top 3, I think that's good. I think that's no arguments here. And Silent Hill 2 Remake or Silent Hill 2 in general, I think being the number... Silent Hill 2 Remake being in the top, I think is recency bias. And I'm not saying that 2 is objectively better, I think, but, you know, give it time to cook. The game's been out for like 3 weeks. But like, recency bias plays such a huge role in people's opinion. If you don't understand this, like, take it from someone that's clinically online, and clinically online in the gaming space of Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. Like, recency bias goes fucking crazy, bro. Like, that dictates... That's like, recency bias is like an extra point on like every game for your average person. I digress though. Let's see what it says. When it comes to representing real terror and its consequences, doesn't get any scarier than Silent Hill 2. Sorry, I'm a Resident Evil guy. I almost said Resident Evil. It's an increasingly disturbing and psychological journey into the repressed thoughts of its unassuming protagonist and the tortured souls he meets along the way. Emotional tragedy, guilt, anger, abuse, and the horrible ways the resulting trauma manifests are handled with grace and maturity that only strengthens Silent Hill 2's disturbing subject matter. That mounting feeling that you are fleeing from an inescapable mistake, all leading up to the haunting revelation at the end and a devastating fight against one of video gaming's most menacing antagonists, makes Silent Hill 2 the scariest game of all time. So this is the scariest game of all time list now? Since this is underlined and in clickable text? I'm just poking the hornet's nest. The original Silent Hill 2 is perhaps the bleakest, most somber game ever made, and Bloober Team has successfully recreated this miserable magic. Ensuring the remake is a deeply effective descent into genuinely uncomfortable terror, with the 2024 remake, Team Silent's nightmarish vision is preserved. It's a modern reminder, not just of an era where Konami was a master of survival horror, but also the significant power of Silent Hill 2's unrelenting misery. There's something about the PS2 version, though, that keeps us coming back to its slightly pixelated fog and uniquely haunting atmosphere. It's fair to say that we've been seeing this restless town in our dreams ever since we stepped foot in it back in 2001. So this sort of comes off as like they're giving it both to Silent Hill 2 OG and Silent Hill 2 Remake, which that's probably the best thing they could. But I guarantee, look at this. I've been making YouTube videos for a while now. I've been creating content for a while now. The reason they picked Silent Hill 2 for the number 1 right here, so you could transition into the next, like, oh, okay, let's go check out the review. They're definitely going to get extra clicks by putting this above Silent Hill 2. But I'm not saying it doesn't deserve the top spot. But lists like this are not to be taken fully serious because there's a lot of manipulation that goes on with this kind of thing. An example is in my tier list video. I didn't do this for manipulation purposes, just so you could go watch the video. I didn't want to rant again about Silent Hill 2. But I already reviewed Silent Hill 2, so I kept it brief and left my video at the end of the tier list if you want to see an in-depth dive. But this is like the same kind of thing where they followed up at the end. Oh, they do this for everything. Wait. See our review of Dead Space. See our review of Alien Isolation. Please be the review. It is! Oh my god, they have no shame. Top 6 game. See our review of Alien Isolation. I'm getting secondhand chill. I actually am receiving secondhand embarrassment. I feel flushed. $15,000 comments. Woo! I'm sure they're all happy. This review stopped me from purchasing Alien Isolation back in 2014. Waited until December 2017. Lost 3 years of fantastic gameplay. At least I've had the last almost 5 years of enjoyment. Shame on you, Ryan. Shame on you, Ryan. Shame on you. Alien Isolation 2 announced, but all those armchair industry experts out there told me that my review specifically killed the sequel. I should review this when it comes to just to fuck with all those people. Here's when you know you've made a horrible tweet. 2,300 comments, 1,000 likes, 2 million views. This is the motherfucker that gave it a 5. Yeah, being an insufferable isn't a personality or a comedy routine, Ryan. This ain't it, Ryan. Jesus Christ, dude. That bad play, man. Stuff like that ruins your internet reputation for the rest of your life. Like this, it's almost sad seeing stuff like this because this could have been his redemption arc. Like tweeting out like, oh man, I feel sort of ashamed for that Alien Isolation review. And then you would have people in the comments still saying horrible things about you, but you'd see some character growth, you know? You'd be like, you know, oh, that's cool that like he looks back on that. But like this, not only is he like not embarrassed of the bad review, like that people universally fucking despise, but doubling down and saying you should review the sequel. Oh my God. Like this is on grounds for just being fired for being a dumbass. I digress though. Great list. Am I right? All right, guys. Now I'm going to rate this list at a 10. Ready? I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. You know why? Because that's the classic IGN rating. Actually, I know it, a 5.9 mediocre. Give it a 5.9 mediocre at best. Yeah, maybe I'll do a list and receive some hate too. That'd be fun. Now, guys, don't, like I said earlier, don't go see their review. Go watch my review, okay? Exclamation mark YouTube. Then you gotta click that link, and then there's a link in the details of that video that you gotta go watch, okay? Don't look at IGN's review. Go get angry at my review. There, I'm trying my manipulation tactics. Are they working? Eternal Darkness wasn't on the list as well, which is honestly unforgivable. I have played Lost of Vivo, yeah. That's a great game. That's a really good, like, Silent Hill, like, scariest game ever made. What should be number 1? The scariest game ever made? If I would probably put RE7, but I would put in the description of why I put it there. If you play with the headset on, full volume, no spoilers, and if you're not doing exactly that, then no, it's not. But if you're doing exactly that, then yes. Picking I think like picking a scariest game of all time, that's super subjective. Like everything is subjective, but that's like crazy subjective. Like, and look, like Subnautica for me is in my top 3. That game scared the fuck out of me. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about what I'd put in the top 25. Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica 4, 2 remake, 4 remake, Silent Hill 1, 2, 3, Amnesia Machine of Pigs, Harvester, Phantasmagoria 2. What would you guys put as your number 1 horror game ever made? Let's hear it. Thank you, Commander Kato. Thank you. E.T. Remake, Resident Evil 1 Remake. If I made a list of top 10 survival horror games ever made, or top 10 horror games ever made, I think RE1 Remake. My favorites are RE1 Remake, Silent Hill 2, and Dead Space Remake. Dead Space Remake. If we're going to like the roots of horror, like we don't have shit like Left 4 Dead 2 on there or Resident Evil 4, then Dead Space, Silent Hill, Resident Evil 1 Remake. Luigi's Mansion. Oh!